I'm Jay.
And I'm John.
And we're Bucket List Travellers.
And in this video, we'll answer the question, how expensive is traveling in Nicaragua? So firstly, why visit Nicaragua?
Well, Nicaragua is a backpacker's paradise.
It's the land of volcanoes and lakes and beaches and so much more.
And it has everything its neighbour Costa Rica has without the heavy price tag.
For 18 months during the COVID pandemic, we lived in Nicaragua, in Granada for 1 year, and then we travelled around Nicaragua for 6 months. This video is going to share the breakdown of our travel costs throughout that 6 months when we were travelling around Nicaragua.
So we're going to go through accommodation, food, transport, activities, and everything else you'll need to know to visit Nicaragua.
Okay, let's start with accommodation.
So we travelled extensively throughout Nicaragua, visiting 14 of the 17 departments in the country. So we know a fair bit about the cost of accommodation throughout Nicaragua. And our accommodation spend was on average over that 6-month period, $30 per night. So that ranged from hostel kind of accommodation that was around $15 a night, to the more expensive ones were on Ometepe Island and Selva Negra, and they were $65 a night.
In Nicaragua, there's accommodation to suit all needs. So if you're looking for budget accommodation, say a dorm room, for example, then you'd expect to pay between $7 to $15 per person per night. If you're looking for a room or a studio, expect to pay between $20 to $40 per room per night. And if you want the luxurious experience, then expect to pay between $60 to $200 and above per night.
So when looking at accommodation, most accommodation will actually have breakfast included, which is great for saving money. And the internet isn't always the fastest, but it will be included in your room rate in most places.
Yeah, so typical speeds for internet that we found were around 5 megabits per second for downloads and 1 to 2 megabits per second for uploads. So not great.
Hot water isn't usually a feature of rooms in Nicaragua, but at the same time, it's a hot place, so you generally don't need it.
Yeah, that's true. The rates will vary depending on what time of the year it is. So peak season tends to be from late December through to April. From then on, it's the wet season and rates will be lower. Now, it also pays to negotiate at that time of year as well, and also throughout the whole year. But we did find some good deals during the wet season when we were in Nicaragua.
And now for the most delicious part of your trip to Nicaragua, the food. So as we mentioned, in most accommodation, we had breakfast included in our room rate, so that kept the cost down. And our spend per person per day on average was only $5 a day for food.
Yeah, it also helped that some accommodation options that we had also gave dinner as well as breakfast.
Yeah, definitely.
Very handy. And also to keep our costs down, we did a lot of food shopping and cooked our own food. So the average cost of that per day was only $1.50. One shop at the markets for $10 would last us for a whole week, which is pretty crazy. We put a whole video together about just that in our $10 market challenge. Make sure you check that out.
Nicaragua is full of delicious food that you must try. So some of our favorites included nacatamales.
Another street food that you must try when you're in Nicaragua is vigorón. So that's probably around $1.50 and it is very addictive.
We also loved fritangas. So they're like grilled meats. They come in at around $3 to $5 per serving and they're very filling. What other foods were there?
If you're around beach areas, make sure you try the ceviche. We got those for around $5 US. You can even get lobster for less than $10, which is such a steal. It's
so amazing.
Yeah, just amazing.
So in terms of the price ranges, street food will cost about $1. And we actually did a $1 street food challenge. So check out that video if you've got a chance. Local eats will be around $3 to $5 per serve. And then if you're going to a fancy cafe or restaurant, then expect to pay around $10 to $15 per serve.
So as we mentioned before, we did a lot of grocery shopping during our time in Nicaragua. So a few tips for you. The cheapest supermarkets that you will find will be the Parleys or Maxi Parleys. There's also La Colonia. Now that's more expensive. However, they have a much bigger range of food and other goods and a lot of imported goods as well, but you will be paying for the privilege. And finally, if you go to the markets, that's where you're going to get the cheapest prices of all. So we went to the markets a lot for our fruit and veggies. You can also get eggs and meat there as well. The next item is transport. Now, there are many different types of transport that you can take when traveling throughout Nicaragua. We used almost exclusively the public buses. It was really fun to go on the public buses. The bus system is so extensive. You can get to every corner of Nicaragua just by using the local buses, and it's extremely cheap. So our rule of thumb was per hour of travel time, you'd probably spend around $1.
Yeah, and it's a great way to experience local life as well.
Our average trip cost was probably around $2.50, and so the average trip time was between 2 and 3 hours. That's another great thing about Nicaragua. You're never too far away from another city or destination. It's all very close together.
In terms of public transport options, there's the local buses, they're the cheapest. There's also micro buses or mini buses. Now, they're a bit more direct, but they are a bit more expensive, but not too much. There's also ferries to take you to places like Ometepe Island and to the far side of Lake Nicaragua, which is San Carlos.
There are also private transport options that you can take when traveling around Nicaragua. So there are private shuttles between most destinations that you can either book online or book through your hostel or hotel. They range between $20 to $40 if you're not interested in taking a public bus. There's also car hire. Now, there is a big range with the car hire costs. So expect to pay between $30 for a small car up to $100 plus for an SUV. And the big cost in that is the insurance. So insurance is very costly in Nicaragua. And also we wouldn't really recommend driving by car, especially at nighttime, because it's quite dangerous. So there's
dogs, there's cows on the road, there's random people walking out onto the street that might not be wearing very visible clothes, very bright clothing.
Yeah, there's just a lot of hazards. So it's probably best not to drive, or at least let someone else do the driving for you.
So the other thing to keep in mind is that outside of the major cities, especially around the beach areas, the roads are dirt roads, and especially in wet season, they can get really bogged down. So that can make driving around a little bit difficult.
Yeah, if you have to drive, just make sure you have a four-wheel drive. Now, another fun category, activities in Nicaragua.
We stayed in Nicaragua for quite a long period of time, so we really spread out our activities, which kept our costs down as well. But if you're looking at the price range for activities, a lot of entrance fees are only like $3 to $5 for places like Ojo del Agua and looking at volcanoes. If you are looking for a more expensive tour, you can do a whole day tour for around $100.
So our most expensive activity was a tour of the Indio Maze, which is in Rio San Juan. It was a full day tour by boat and with tour guides and lunch, everything
beer.
Included. Yeah, it was such great value, and it was $100 for the both of us.
So other fun activities include going volcano boarding. That was around $30 per person. And that was a full day. It included an excursion to the beach as well. So that was quite fun.
Yeah, and we also did a day trip from Granada to Somoto Canyon, which is about 3 hours drive away. And that was only $30 per person as well. So
for a full day trip with breakfast and lunch.
Yeah, so the cost of activities is really cheap relative to a lot of other countries. You will really get your money's worth in Nicaragua.
Yeah, and there are so many free activities as well. We loved going to the beach. We loved just exploring the streets and the markets. It's just a wonderful country to visit on a budget.
There are also other costs that you need to be mindful of when visiting Nicaragua.
So you're going to have to enter the country and exit the country, and there are fees associated with that. And most importantly, in order to enter Nicaragua, you need a negative COVID PCR test.
With border crossings, we paid $12 per person to enter Nicaragua, and then we left Nicaragua at San Pancho at the Costa Rica border and paid $3 per person. Now, at the other Costa Rica border, I believe you pay $4 per person.
And if you're exiting via the airport, then the exit fee is included in the cost of your ticket.
Yeah, and I believe that's around $35.
We also paid fees to extend our visas. So we were on a 90-day visa into Nicaragua, and every 30 days after that, we needed to extend our visas. How much was that?
That was $25 per person, and then there was also a $1 printing fee for the form.
The other cost you might have to pay when you're visiting Nicaragua if you're visiting during COVID is a COVID test. You can only get COVID tests in Managua, and they're a fixed price of $150 per person.
Yep, there are only 2 locations in the whole country where you can get a COVID test. So we've got those locations on our website, and we'll also put them in our description for you. So putting that all together, our total spend for the 6 months traveling in Nicaragua was less than $8,500, or less than $25 per person per day.
So if you want more detail about how to travel in Nicaragua, we've got a lot of information on our website, jjbucketlisttravelers.com. We've also got about 100 videos on visiting Nicaragua on our YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe for more travel and Nicaragua content.
We are Bucket List Travelers.
See you next time.
Hey, como te quiero, Nicaragua.